Welcome, everybody, joining us this morning. Your anchor is Olga Tamanova at Media Center Ukraine. The second event of today will focus on the development of the fuel market in Ukraine. We'll be talking about the current situation, the forecasts, and the possible solutions for the fuel market. Today's speaker is Serhii Kuiun, fuel market expert. Welcome, sir. Well, since July the 1st, there is an information that it's likely that the fuel excise tax rates will be increased. Will it be taking place and what the effects will be? As for the reasons, I think they are self-evident. The reason being that we've got a gap in the budget in the ballpark of 200 to 400 billion hryvnias. We sometimes hear the 700 billion figure. A government is searching for the opportunity to bridge this gap, this vacuum. Unfortunately, the only way to do this is through the internal resources. This money that we have available is targeted towards defense. The Western money coming in from the Western partners are targeted towards humanitarian issues, that is, salaries for teachers, doctors, and it is forbidden to use them for the defense purposes. Accordingly, the government has done what has been expected. It's not popular, but the only way to go is to increase the taxes, including the fuel levies. The changes that have been suggested, according to our calculations, are these. In the second half of 2024, will allow the revenue to be increased by 37 billion hryvnias in levies and taxations. According to the government bill and the alternative that is being under discussion, this is the first phase of this increase. As for the effects, the repercussions are treated in a way that the prices will go up. That is not a given. The thing is that the prices for gasoline or diesel fuel, it'll go in the 1.5 for gasoline and 2 hryvnias for diesel fuel. If translated into the current prices, we will see that the increase will not be that big, but the changes in 2 to or 1 hryvnia only is typical for the market. The consumers have grown accustomed to it. What you see in the Telegram channels through other social media saying that the price will be skyrocketed to 75 to 80 hryvnias, there is no reason to believe. This is the opponents of the government to disseminate this information. These are likely to be the big industrial groups. They use the fuel big time. No one likes the taxes to go up. Consumers don't like it. Smaller businesses, the owners of the cars don't like it. The business that sells the fuel will not like it, because for them, the more costly the fuel price is, the less you will make. That is to say that you expect that the ceiling will be the increase by 2 hryvnias per liter. That is very plausible, but this will depend on the condition of the market. For example, if they're introduced back in May, we would not have failed any differences, because the prices for the crude oil was going down, and this swing would not have hurt. The taxation would have been absorbed by the world prices. As for the world prices, it's relatively low. Let me remind you that in March it was 93 per barrel. It is $80 per barrel. Last week we saw 78. The condition in the market is very favorable. The diesel fuel has been decreasing in prices. The same goes for the LPG. But it's very likely that the prices will decrease because this is a worldwide trend. This will also lead to the corrections in the domestic market. As for the long-term strategy, in general, it is likely that the government and the market are developing in a way to come closer to Europe. How fast do you think this process will be effected? When we talk about the European prices, I absolutely agree that we can talk about European prices when we have European incomes for the consumers. Where do we get this idea of European vector in terms of taxation? Well, taxation must go, but the question is by how much they will be increased. There is no place for far-fetched numbers. We have been guided by the directive from the European Union that talks about the lower cap for the taxation of fuel. The government has taken that as a guidance and has broken it down for 4 years. That means that the law provides that every 1st of January 1.5 to 2 hryvnias increase will be initiated. This is not a given that we will arrive at that point in 4 years' time. Poland and Hungary, for example, being the EU member states for a decade now, in some cases have not reached the minimal rate recommended by the European Commission. To reiterate, this thing will be adjusted on the way if the economic situation allows for that, if the customers can afford that. The war factor should be factored in as well. This is not set in stone. We will see what is happening. Now there is a possibility for such adjustments. What we will do in the future, the adjustments may be halted, or sometimes we can cancel them altogether because we are not yet an EU country. When speaking about the next topic, we know that Ukrainian market lives amongst the war raging on. We know the challenges that the energy sector is facing, and in general, the whole market situation, because we are all understanding that shellings and hitting of the infrastructure is affecting how fuel market will be affected by the air raids, shelling by the Russians. Will it lead to the situation where the fuel will not be available or the prices will go up? The attention in general goes into this following factor. Since the start of the full-scale operation, we know that the Russians are targeting the infrastructure in general. Then we seem to have forgotten about that. Oil refineries, all depots are still on the short lists that Russia is hitting altogether. According to our assessment, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, more than 50 facilities, including oil depots, oil refineries. Let me remind you that there are bigger producers, bigger refineries as Ugortat and many oil refineries. There were about a dozen of them. 5 of those have been completely obliterated. half of them just close down their activities to make sure that their staff is in safety. This year alone, we have calculated that there have been about 10 attacks against the gas and oil depots. We've seen recently the destruction of 2 oil depots, saying that they are targeting our infrastructure. What are my predictions? I don't know what their rationale is, but they have been bombing the infrastructure for 2 years, and for 2 years the market has proven stable. More to that, all the kinds of and brands of oil are stable. Why is it? Because apart from the energy sector, the fuel market is very much decentralized. We don't have major facilities or knots that would affect the situation. We've got dozens of flows going through the border. We've got thousands of fuel tankers carrying and delivering the fuels. That is to say, all depots that are being attacked, in every depot you have the so-called dead residue, and perhaps there are vapors at the depots, and of course they're all aflame. But you know that oil depots are used more likely than not to relaunch and to use them as the overpasses to deliver oil from the trucks onto the railway delivery. We've seen that, we've done that before. These shellings will not bring the result the Russians want. I'm sure that the fuel market will be stable. I'm often asked whether we've got a major need for the generation. The situation that we are using now, I understand that the electricity is provided here through the generators. You see, if the need for the fuel will increase 2 times, the market will find the way out. This complex time shows that one of the things that we are confident about is that the fuel will be available. That is to say that the challenges that we are likely to face in terms of the whole generation system, that there will be a lot of shutdowns of electricity. The fuel market, you think, is ready to respond. Yes, it is ready. Geographically, we've got a new system of delivery through the European border. Logistically, we are also absolutely different vis-a-vis the situation before 2022. The fleet of fuel tankers is ready to go, is up and running. This market has passed a number of tests. 2022 was one test, and the end of that year, when we were under blackouts, everything has withstood the test. I find it difficult to see that the situation will be worsening. Colleagues, if you have the questions, you're welcome to ask them. Victoria Nakonechna from Ukraine Forum. I've got one question. It is rather going to the minutes. What's the share of fuel consumption is taken by the generators, not by the ordinary consumers, but some restaurants and perhaps Ukraine 4 media outlet is using them as well. It's difficult to say. We were trying to gauge that at the beginning of the 2022. See how the generator is being fed. A person comes to the gas station with a cistern, with a tank, and where will this person take this tank? How many generators do we have? What's the fleet number? What is the time of running them? How often they are exploited? It's difficult to say. When you see people saying with a serious face that they know the share, I don't believe that this is well grounded. At the same time, I understand that generators will not be able to supply all the energy we need. It's very expensive for one thing. But transportation, for example, on the one hand, the generator consumes fuel, then it means that the market will balance the consumption in general. What they need, it's difficult to tell. The surge was seen in 2022, according to our assessment, in the ballpark of somewhat 10% of the whole market. One thing or the other, we are not talking about manifold increase or critical percentage that we will not be able to live up to. And there is another issue, that is the Russian fuel coming to the Ukrainian market. I know that you are monitoring the situation. What's your take on that? Indeed, there is a problem. The problem is there. We see that LPG solution has not been resolved. Let me remind you what I'm talking about. The majority of LPG is imported from Poland. Poland, in its term, is the biggest importer of the Russian LPG in the world. More than 100,000 tons per month, more than 1 million tons per year. And in some fabulous way, Poland becomes an exporter of this fuel product to Ukraine. Either this is a Russia-produced LPG with different documentation, or it may not be a Russian LPG that was targeted towards Ukraine as an exchange for the Russian one, because what I'm saying is, were it not for the Russian LPG, this LPG would have been consumed in Poland. Correspondingly, it is exported to Ukraine because they have the Russian LPG. You may not look into the chemical structure of that LPG. The price tells for itself because it is 15 to 20% not as the expensive compared to the Sweden produced, for example. We are talking about $150 that we receive the prices at the Ukrainian-Polish border. You logistically can track them down, how these tanks go through Poland from Russia and then onto Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainian Council of Defense and Security was likely to have gathered today, and hopefully they will pass a decision on that. I think there was some procrastination because the Ukrainian Council of Defense and Security has been taking on new people, a new team. And the second thing is diesel fuel. The major topic at the fuel market has to do with the rumors to the effect that the customs is likely to control more severely the processes of diesel fuel coming from Romania through waterways, for example. This is a major channel of delivery. Romania accounts for 50% of our imports in general. That is to say that this is an emotional situation. And the reason for that is that we are witnessing unexplainable things. And that is the deliveries that are not there in the market. The prices are not the market-driven prices. And the reason is the only one. This is a Russian fuel. How does it get here to Ukraine? Black Sea, perhaps is the largest waterway in the world filled with the Russian fuels. Novorossiysk, Tuapse are the two biggest ports in the world that overpasses the fuels. The Russians are adapting, they are adjusting, looking for the way how to get to the sanctioned markets. One of the gateways is Turkey. As Poland is the leader in the world in importing LPG, then Turkey is the world leader of importing the Russian diesel fuel, about 1.5 million tons per month. Automatically, Turkey unexpectedly has become an exporter of diesel fuel. Everyone understands where does that fuel come from. The situation is being monitored, and logistics of these deliveries must be parceled and understood. So such kind of fuels are there, and I think the decisions, well thought decisions, will be passed for them not to be able to enter Ukrainian market. Thank you for your participation in today's event. We have so deeply understood the risks that we face. Thank you very much for being interested in this topic. The next briefing will take place at 15:30. We'll be talking about the results of the European Parliament election, together with Mr. Chentsov representing Ukraine at the European Parliament. Glory to Ukraine. Stay tuned.